a stranger with a gun came upon two teens taking pictures under a rising full moon. But violence is only the beginning of this story.
Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and I've spent my career talking about how lives are undone by violence. The Letter is a podcast about how lives are remade. Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, welcome to Project Recovery. I am Casey Scott. This is my co-host, Dr. Matt Woolley.
Hey, Casey.
Hey, how are you doing today?
I'm really good.
All right.
Having a good day.
What's going on in the world of Dr. Matt right now?
Oh, man. So my kids and I are really excited. They just announced the new Star Wars land opens May 31st at Disneyland.
And how old are your kids?
Too old to care about that. But, well, I have a 13, 15, 18, and 20-year-old, and we love going to Disneyland. It's just a fun thing we've always done. So we're excited. We're going to be buying tickets, man.
All right. Well,
Yep.
So this is a show about recovery, and it's about me, it's about Dr. Matt, but it's also about people in our community, and we want to celebrate, their lives, their recovery, and kind of walk you through their story. And so that's what we're going to do today. We've got our first guest on. Now, I know this
I'm really excited about this guy.
I went to rehab with him, and, there's only 14 people in the world that I can say that with right now.
And do you know why I'm really excited about it?
Why?
Because he can dish on you.
Well, yeah, and he's going to be able to talk a little bit about that, but his name is Keaton. Keaton, how are you, man?
How's it going, Casey?
Hey, I haven't seen you since recovery.
Totally.
And how are you doing?
I'm doing well. About 6 months sober, 6 months yesterday. Living in sober living and going to school. Staying clean.
All right, so let's find a little bit about your story. We've shared mine on here. What's the Keaton story?
I guess my story is summed up in kind of trying quick fixes throughout my life that generally result in me using a lot of drugs and alcohol and blowing my life up and starting over.
How many times did you blow up your life and start over?
A good 4 to 5 times probably. It's a very observable cycle. I can take you right through it if you'd like.
Oh, well, yeah. I think people are fascinated about the story. And when I talk to people and in recovery, in which I'm getting better at, but I always tell people there's 3 different versions of the story. There's a story you're going to tell the person off the street, which is usually about a 3-minute story, and you leave out all the good stuff. Then there's about a 5-minute story where you tell business coworkers and that, but you go a little into the detail. And then there's a 15-minute story where you will tell another addict, and that's when they know if you really have went through the program or what you've done. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, in terms of level of detail. I also think, I don't know, part of my favorite part about recovery stories is the little kind of slices along the way, the real deep, dirty details that you can kind of share with random people that are, those really get me going.
And that's what I was telling Dr. Matt. I was like, for somebody who's been in the recovery, the devil's really in the details. And that's when you know if someone is being honest. Because when we were in recovery together, we do a thing called process. And that's where you had 15 people sitting in a circle and somebody would bring up a topic or a conversation or something they were battling with, and then you would all process it and you would talk about it. And what would happen is that you're with 15 people who have the addict brain, who have seen things and have learned how to manipulate the system. So if you tried to pull anything back or hold anything back or try to sell a bill of goods that they weren't buying, boy, they called you out on it quick.
Totally. And addicts and alcoholics are definitely not great at being honest themselves sometimes, but they can definitely tell when other people aren't.
So what would it look
honest.
like? What's an example of a common lie or half-truth that somebody would tell in one of these process sessions, just so people who haven't been there know what that's like?
The thing is sometimes you are processing stuff about your own story, and sometimes you are processing stuff that was a house issue. Somebody not doing their dishes or somebody sleeping through meditation. And so people just not giving it their all.
So they would just lie or...
Yeah, or withhold the truth, right?
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, having spent a lot of time in treatment facilities and therapies and meetings and such, you just kind of, you are able to tell pretty quickly when you're not getting a genuine vibe from someone. oftentimes it'll be like when they're telling their story, stuff they gloss over, and some of it is omitted. You can tell there's a level of comfort, like they probably themselves aren't comfortable with the truth about their situation.
So
I know that's true for me. Like, I like to gloss over things.
Yeah. So without, like, we don't have to get into detail right now, but do you feel like both of you did that in your process? Did you ever gloss over details or maybe give a half truth?
I know for me, 100%. I've been to 3 inpatient rehabs. I've done, I think, 4 or 5 outpatient treatments and about a zillion hours of therapy. And I know along the way, like, I've gotten pretty good at playing like the treatment game, where I like know the answers to give. I know how to avoid digging deep if I don't want to.
And and I think that's a case for a lot of us, is that you get in there, and when you're in this process group, you want somebody to almost break down and finally admit it to the truth. Because sometimes when they say something out loud in a process group, this might be the first time that they've ever said it out loud ever.
Yeah.
And, some of the deepest, darkest stuff that you've been holding in. Mm-hmm. And until you get it out, you really feel this weight just inside you.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was getting at is, so what's the effect then when the group calls you out and you break down and you fess up and you say it, maybe it is for the first time. Like, is that therapeutic for you guys?
You know what? We had one guy in our group that, he was this stoic gentleman, and you thought he was never going to break down. And the thing is you would sit in these process groups, and you never knew where it was going to go or what was going to get brought up, or they would go off on a tangent. And this guy was a stoic gentleman, and all of a sudden he had his moment, and he broke down. And this is the first time he'd ever said what he had done and kind of his story. And afterwards, he's crying but he goes, that was the best thing for me. And at that point, it shifted for him.
What did you notice?
He was more honest. He was
from that point forward.
Okay. And it was just kind of like, I finally got it off my chest.
So in therapy, whether it's a group therapy process like you guys are talking about or individual therapy, you've done a zillion hours of therapy, which is a lot. We call that catharsis, right? There's that kind of psychological and emotional release, and it's very much like a balloon that's about to pop. There's just too much air in there, and finally you let it out, and the relief that comes with that usually is changing for a person. What about you, Keaton? Do you feel like you've had that experience?
I don't know that I've had it in this like immediate life-changing sense, but I know that when I choose to be honest, like I actually see options for myself and see like the ability to change. And I know also when I'm like not being fully honest or not digging into my own stuff, that I just kind of spin in circles there in terms of not only my life, but like specifically in therapy. Like I've had therapists before that have been like, look, you're just going over the same stuff. Like, do you want to change anything, or do you just want to keep giving me like the answers that you want to give me so you can get out of here and
what'd
go
you think
home?
when they said that to you? That's pretty confrontational, right?
Yeah.
That's how we call people liars without calling them liars. You're just like, come on, be honest.
Exactly. Oh, I mean, for the longest time, I was like, kind of, screw you. I'm smarter than you, or I'm smarter than this,
or I know better for myself. Maybe, right?
And at the end of the day, like my attitude at that point was like, I just want, as soon as I'm done with this, I can go do what I want. I just want to get people off my back. But yeah, once I was able to get to the point where I wanted to be honest with myself, then I could be honest with other people, which is kind of cyclical. Like when you're honest with yourself, you can be honest with other people, which helps you be more honest with yourself type deal. So,
real quick, Keaton, what kind of program do we run?
An honest program.
We said that over and over again, and I want you to know that I took that back to my house, and I now tell my kids, when we're doing something like this, and I can see that they're going off on the line, I go, hey, what kind of program do we run? And my kids go, we run an honest program, Dad.
Totally.
And so, honesty, it sounds so stupid, but it's so simple. You know what I mean? Sometimes that honesty is the key, and it's the honesty with others. It's the honesty with yourself.
Yeah.
And, the honesty with yourself is the tough part, and in the addict brain, and when you're drinking in this, I don't know how many times I would lie to myself and I would buy it. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And the stupid thing is I know. You know what I mean? I know that it's a lie, but somehow
that addict brain is like masterful at justifying and lying to oneself, right?
Like I'm Jedi mind tricking myself.
Exactly, yeah.
These are not the droids you're looking for. Okay, I'll have a beer. You know what I mean? It's just like, this is insane. Before we get more into your recovery and what's different this time, Keaton, let's let people kind of know, this is term DOC. What's your DOC?
My DOC is, I would say alcohol. Alcohol has definitely given me the most problems over the years, but I'm really an equal opportunity drug user. Psychedelics have been a large part of my life. Uppers, downers, twisters, benders, lefters, righters. I love it all. And the one common theme throughout everything has been alcohol.
And, that for me was, riding shotgun. But in all actuality, it was driving. Let's talk about, you've said that you've been to how many different rehabs?
3 inpatients and then 4 or 5 outpatients.
And when was the earliest? How old are you now?
I'm 30 years old.
When was your first?
I think I was 22 or 23. It's that kind of there's a 5 or 6 year period of life where all the dates and details get a little lost, but I believe I was around that age.
Pause right there. What age did you start using? Probably. What was your first drug, and when did you start using?
Yeah, I in high school, probably 15 years old. Smoked pot occasionally, drank very occasionally. I mean, I had a pretty darn structured household. Both my parents were Air Force pilots, so I wasn't
yes, ma'am, yes, sir.
Free and wild. Yeah, totally. So, I mean, I tried to get away with what I could, and I don't know, in some ways I feel like that, like, I was, like, training for my future of deceptiveness, or deception, by, like, trying to get around that stuff. But really, once I went to college is when I kind of really got heavily into substance use on a daily basis.
Now, was it out of fun? Was it out of escape? Do you know?
I thought it was about fun. Looking back on it, I think it was more about escape. And again, going back to like that structured upbringing I had, I didn't really know how to make decisions for myself. I was objectively like a successful adolescent and like academically, athletically. But I feel like I never really did anything for myself. I was kind of told what to do, and I excelled at it. And so once I left home and went to college, I felt like I did not have the ability to really guide my own life. And I found that using substances like took care of that problem. Like it didn't really matter what I was doing because I was feeling good all the time. Like I remember going to college and like as my parents dropped me off, like crying and being like, I'm not ready for this. And basically, like I'm 30 years old now. I still feel like I'm figuring out like how to direct my own life in a way that I want. So for the past 10, 12 years, that's really been a theme of kind of directionlessness and looking for the easiest, quickest solution, which oftentimes involves drugs and alcohol.
But you say directionless, and I think to myself, and I'm 45, and some of the stuff you're saying is the same things I'm dealing with, and I don't think it's because of alcohol, and I don't think about drugs. I think it really it plays into the mix, but I think you probably have the same feelings.
Yeah, I think that's to some degree pretty normal. I mean, maybe what you're saying is when you were the way your parents raised you, there were a lot of good things about it, but one of the negative side effects might have been that you hadn't over that adolescent time learn to find your own direction and motivate yourself. And I think anybody gets into their 30s and 40s, and sometimes you're like, you feel, you watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off or something like that, and you feel 15 again, and that can happen for sure. But it sounds like what you're saying is that that's maybe been a bigger issue for you than maybe the average person.
Yeah. Finding like intrinsic motivation has been probably my largest challenge, and like I said, one of my main solutions to that is to get all twisted up and not worry about it.
So at 22, 23, when you enter your first rehab, was that a choice from you or was that a choice from your parents?
I guess it was kind of a family decision. At the time, I was living in Park City, Utah. I was living with my girlfriend at the time and a few other friends, and I'd gotten to the point where I was drinking every single day. Like, I was working seasonally, so at the end of the ski season, like, my job ended, skiing ended, and I was like literally in the basement, like drinking gallons of vodka by myself, not really knowing what's going on, like losing that relationship, had no idea what was coming next, and that's when my family intervened and got me into an inpatient facility at that point.
Fascinating. And I mean, everybody's got a different story. Everyone's got a different journey, but there's similarities in a lot of our stories. And we're going to get to that coming up next.
Yeah, we're back. And I had a question. We went away for a little bit. Now we're back. And I was thinking, one of the really interesting things Keaton was talking about was he got to that low point in his life. I assume college had gone away. Your girlfriend had gone away. You were working on the seasonal schedule, and so you had a lot of time during the summer to just drink. And your parents came in and talked you into going to rehab for the first time. My question is, what were some of the things that tipped your parents off that they needed to take that level of action? Because I think there's a lot of parents probably, wondering the same sorts of things. Does my child have a big enough problem? They're an adult. When do I intervene?
Totally. Well, I know, like, my girlfriend at the time was close with my parents and, like, was cluing them in on what was going on with me. Even my friends that I lived with communicated with my parents. So, like, it was not a secret that I was really off the deep end there.
And were your friends and your girlfriend, did they also drink or use? Like, or was your behavior totally foreign to them?
They did drink and use.
So even they recognized you were having a problem,
yeah.
Even though they used sometimes, they felt you were way over the top.
Totally. And like I said, I was living in Park City, Utah, which is has a pretty good party culture. So I kind of...
Have you heard that, Casey? I haven't heard
that.
You have? Okay, all right. Okay, go ahead.
So I kind of, like, justified my actions. I'm like, I look around me, everyone I know, like, drinks regularly, smokes pot regularly, uses cocaine regularly. And the fact that all these people looked at me and was like, wow, there's a problem here. It's like, said something. But yeah, like, I wasn't out at the bars, like, having a few beers. Like, I was drinking alone.
Okay, so there's one. There's one. Maybe you were using more than your friends who in this party culture. But number two was...
But you need to go back and talk about that, because in the party culture that he's talking about, sometimes that was a badge of honor. Was using more than the guy next to you. I mean, it was you like, well, how many beers did you drink? I had 12. How many did you? I had 14. Okay. And for some reason, that was something that...
Kind of who's the most manly, who could one-up the other, that kind of thing.
And so sometimes when you're in that headspace and you're like, yeah, well, what? Because I had 2 more beers than you, I've got a problem?
Right. Okay, there you go. Yeah, so it's easy to justify, I'm a winner, I'm not a guy with a problem, I can drink more.
Yeah, or you would sit there and because I had friends that would contact my parents, and people would go like, "Yeah, I don't know what it is," and I would go, "I don't get it. Why are you mad at me? You drink too," and you get that in your head, and you're like, "Why? Hello, pot. This is kettle. You're black. I mean, you guys are drinking too,
right?
Yeah. But they didn't ever go to the excess that I did.
Okay.
And I think sometimes when I was doing it, and not to steal your thunder with Keaton, is that I was going for that excess. I thought that was cool. I mean, I can look back now and go, yeah, no, that wasn't cool.
Well, it's kind of was it the competition part of it, or?
But you look back at some of the 80s movies, the 90s movies. That guy's the hero, the guy that got really drunk, the Jim Belushi, the Animal House. You know what I mean?
Have you seen Animal House? I'm not sure Jim Belushi's the hero, but.
Are you kidding?
He gets on all the posters. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Jim Belushi, Bluto. I had a sweater in college
that said college.
Yes.
Yeah, and he drinks the entire fifth of Jack Daniels. Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about.
Smashes the guitar.
Yeah, that's a good part.
Yeah. But so your friends are telling you this, and then you end up going to rehab for the first time. How long were you there?
I believe I was there 30 days. I went out to California. I thought it was a good idea to get out of, like, distance myself from my home surroundings for a little bit. I went to this.
Do you
place.
think that had a big part to do with your drinking, the surroundings and the people, or?
I really don't. I think I've used that as an excuse before, but I don't know. Through my whole drinking and using history, it's been in a lot of different situations and places, and the one constant thing is me. So I really don't.
But maybe that's something you learned later.
Yeah. At that time, I was like, just kind of, and I guess there was a pride thing too of like, I kind of like don't want people to know I'm going to rehab. Like, I just
the stigma.
The stigma. Because like that was my first encounter with like any sort of recovery or treatment or anything like that. So I didn't know what it was about. I felt embarrassed. Again, coming from like leaving high school as like a high achieving person to like being basically a complete degenerate in a few years. I was embarrassed.
So that was 8 years ago. What did the facility? What did they focus on back then?
So that was a 12-step focused facility. It was out in California, out in the Redwoods. And to be honest, like the way I approached it, I was like, number one, I want this girlfriend back. And I just want to take this little vacation, get it over with as quick as possible.
Prove to my parents
everything's all right. Get everyone off my back and go back to my like ski bum lifestyle and just I will never get in this hole of drinking so much again, because like that was just like that was circumstances. If I can clean up for a little bit, like I had no plans on like staying sober long term.
No aftercare.
It's in terms of like an actual plan, yeah, not really.
And so you're done with the 30 days. Mm-hmm. They give you your piece of paper. You move back to Utah. What happens?
I was sober for a couple months. I moved back in with my parents. The girl was obviously gone at this point.
Oh, I thought he would get the girl.
No, that's another thing I've learned is going to rehab for women does not work. They do not stick around. And yeah, I moved back with my parents, got sober for a little bit. Then I got on that marijuana maintenance program, which I would not recommend.
To explain what that is.
Yeah.
You have a little wry smile going.
Totally. Well, I just think it's interesting with particularly like the rise in like cannabis culture nationwide, basically, how a lot of people talk about like the helpfulness of cannabis and the harmlessness of cannabis. And for me, that is not my experience at all. And I know it for quite a few people that I've met in recovery, it's definitely not their experience.
So people think that because they're not drinking,
right?
They can do marijuana and that'll be fine.
But so that was your follow-up treatment plan was I'm gonna use marijuana and stay away from alcohol. Totally. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I remember I moved back in with my friends, and I was not. I believe I was sober when I moved in, and they're all heavy pot smokers and drink quite a bit. And I remember saying to them, I was like, guys, I want to start smoking pot again. And they told me later, they're like, we had a meeting about it. Like we sat down, and we're like, should he smoke pot again? And
so they had concerns enough to sit down and have a meeting, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to get the pot smokers organized.
Totally.
Right like that.
You just order a pizza.
And put a bong out there. They'll get together. But and that's also like another thing. Like my friends have been like super concerned for years that I like didn't really know about. And they I guess came to an agreement that like they didn't mind if I smoked pot.
Did they have an opinion about you drinking again? Would they?
Yeah.
Did they have a?
Yeah. The understanding was that I would not be drinking.
How long did that last?
I want to say like a few months after I got out of that rehab, I was like drinking once in a blue moon, again by myself, because at this point, like my friends know I'm not supposed to be drinking. I live in a fairly small town where like if I go to a bar, like I'm going to see someone I know. So any like drinking was like in secret. But I wasn't drinking like regularly. I started smoking pot again regularly, and things were going okay.
You mentioned earlier that one of your big problems earlier in life was finding intrinsic motivation, or for the listener, that's like a natural internal desire to be motivated to do things. Coming home and getting right into marijuana, how did that affect your motivations?
It certainly didn't help him. I don't.
Well, I asked the question
Yeah.
because there is kind of this counter now in the culture that I do better when I'm smoking marijuana. I get more done. When in
I'm more
fact,
creative.
In the past logic was it zaps your motivation and you sit around the basement and play Mario and eat Doritos. But I want to know personally, like, how did it affect you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would not blame marijuana specifically for like my motivation issues, because I believe that I've used all substances in the same manner to basically mask my fear of life, my fear of wanting to achieve anything, my fear caused because I don't know what I want to achieve. So I use alcohol to mask that. I use marijuana to use that. I use a dozen other drugs to mask that. So I don't.
So it was just another drug.
It was just another drug to me, basically.
Mask that.
Yeah.
And that might have been, would you say, kind of a scary time, trying to reinvent what you were doing, or were you not trying to reinvent yourself yet?
I was not trying to reinvent myself. Actually, that was like a really, really awesome time where I was living with close friends. I was skiing a lot, which was one thing that I could get motivated to do because I really enjoyed it. And I met another girl. That's like a recurring theme in my story is, again, like due to my lack of, I guess, life passion on my part, I latch on to like strong, independent women and like get in super codependent relationships where I get my validation through them. So I met another like really awesome woman, and I thought life. I had a good job. I had the girl. I was able to go skiing. I lived with my friends. I thought like
Life is good.
Life is good. This is as good as it will get.
And then when wasn't it good?
So after like living one winter with those friends, I moved in with this girl, and I was smoking pot like on a very regular basis then, and then I would drink basically only when she was out of town, except when I drink, like I drink. So I'm like, well, she comes home Monday, so I'll be like sobered up Sunday, and then it's Wednesday, and she's home, and I'm like up. Excuse my language.
That's all right.
So that was like when the drinking started again. We went on a vacation to Thailand, and right before that, we had a pregnancy and an abortion and a bunch of medical complications in Thailand, like on this like remote island with like no medical services, and like a bunch of weird stuff happened. And after that, like that relationship was different. I conducted myself differently. I was like super, super codependent. And I started drinking way more regularly again.
And then it come to another crash.
And that was like kind of like a roller coaster for like a couple years where like I would be drinking, I would get in trouble with her. And like I've luckily never had any law problems or anything. I would like clean it up for a bit, and this kind of this roller coaster, and that went on for a couple years. And then she was like, "You have to go to rehab or I'm leaving." And I was like,
Was that the first time she had pulled the rehab card, or had that been, when you say you'd been in trouble with her, is that kind of the dialogue you guys would have every once in a while?
I believe that was like the first time the word rehab was actually spoken out loud.
Okay. Yeah.
But like there was a lot of, just the roller coaster of me drinking in secret, me drinking at work, and me not really doing anything with my life because, again, I had the girl, I had the job, I was able to recreate, to go skiing, to go to concerts, so I like didn't think anything was wrong. And my whole thing again with this like codependent relationship. It was like, as long as she's happy, I'm happy. Except I've also learned that the quickest way to make someone unhappy in a relationship is to just try to make them happy all the time.
Right. And so she says you need to go to rehab. At this point, do you go?
No. So she goes, I think it was like September. She was like, if you go to rehab this month, like I'll stick with you and like, we'll see how this goes. And I was like, no, I got this whole plan. I'm going to go to the gym every day. I'm going to go to AA meetings. And this will all, I'm going to eat healthier. Like this will all work out great. And then I stuck with that for like a week at the most. And then was back where again, I'm drinking in the morning before I go to work, like sobering up a little bit when I come home, like hanging out with her for a little bit, and then like she goes to bed and I'm drinking a bunch then. And so then like that month went by and she was like, that's it, like you got to go. And I was like, what? And so I signed up for rehab, went to rehab, and then I was like so offended. I was like, I went a month later, like why aren't you sticking with me? And like, because I like totally had no respect for her boundaries, no respect for like.
So she broke it off with you at that time?
Yeah, when I went to rehab, and it was funny because like right before that, one of my friends had broken up with his girlfriend and needed a place to live. So I was like, "Can you live with us?" And she was like, "Yeah." And so he moved in. And then I got kicked out, and she later told me, she was like, finally, when he moved in, I could afford to kick you out. So she'd been wanting this thing to be over for quite a while.
What was your attitude about things then under those conditions going into rehab? And what was your attitude about rehab and your drinking?
My attitude was, I'm here to get this girl back.
Again.
So
we got a theme going.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, and in between those two inpatient rehabs, like I skipped over a lot of details. Like I did quite a few outpatient treatments. Like
you tried,
yeah. Well, I don't know if I tried. I was trying to do things to appease people.
To appease people. Okay, so the girls, anyone else, like your parents, maybe?
My parents, yeah, like getting them off my back. Because also like in this cycle of like where I get the job, I get the girl. When I blow that up, I also tend to like spend all my money, like not have a place to live, move back in with my parents. Like I've done that more than a handful of times as well.
So the second rehab was where?
That was in Utah. That was up outside of Ogden. And
how long were you there?
I was there about 30 days. And I remember I like weaseled my way out to get out a little bit early because it was like a big storm was coming and I wanted to go skiing. Which to me is like pretty indicative of like I was just trying to get out of there. I had a really, really positive experience there. And like, to be honest, I love rehab, and that's probably to like a fault. I mean,
what do you love about it?
It's like just easy living.
Can I play Dr. Matt for a minute?
Yeah.
Do you think that because you talked about your structure as a kid growing up, and they kind of gave it to you. When you're in rehab,
ooh, nice, Casey.
You have a similar structure.
Totally.
You get up. You get up. And you know what? I saw that a lot with me, with you, and a lot of people in there. But you have bullet points that you do throughout the day, and they make sure that you do them, and they're holding your hand for the little bit.
100%.
And they go, all right, you're going to get up at 8:30, breakfast at 9. You're going to meditate from 9 to 9:30. You're going to go to the gym from there. You're going to go to this meeting here, and then when you're done, that's it. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a pretty structured. So you like structure.
Yeah. I like to pretend that I don't, but I totally do, and I thrive in it.
When other people create and impose that structure for you.
Yeah.
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 All right, so now you get out of the second rehab.
Yep.
Then what?
I immediately start drinking again because, again,
did you go skiing right away at that storm?
Yeah. I think I went to like pick up my ski stuff at my ex-girlfriend's house. I like walked in and there was like another guy like sitting on the couch that we bought, like watching our TV.
You've been replaced.
The dogs there, and I was like, this is awful. And I like grabbed my ski stuff and went to the liquor store.
That's what I was wondering, if you went straight to skiing and drinking right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
All right. So then how long did that go on until you went to the next rehab?
So that was back in 2016. So Basically, after I started drinking again. I was like really off the rails. I was like super upset about this girl, and I was like, I have to leave Utah. Like this will solve it. My dad at the time was living in Michigan, so I was like, Dad, can I come stay with you for the winter? So I did that, and I got like blackout drunk and drove across the country, which I would not recommend.
No.
Luckily made it there safe. And then, so I was living with my dad. He was like, you have to be sober if you're going to be here. I was like, okay. But my dad's a pilot, so he goes out of town quite frequently. So anytime he's out of town, I'm drinking. Then I get back to like, I'm drinking at night and then being sober-ish during the day. And like my dad's got a breathalyzer, and like it was just an awful situation. It like totally stressed him out. And eventually he was like, yeah, you can't live here anymore. So I came back to Utah and went to live with my mom, and like the same thing, like you got to be sober. And it's like my parents have given me 1 billion chances. And I've just put them through the ringer in terms of like they have been always supportive of me. And I've just constantly abused that and just used them for places to live and money, and all the whole time just have no intention of like actually getting my stuff together.
Before we go any further, I want to say thank you very much for sharing, because I love how open and honest you are. And coming up next, we're going to talk about where we met and then your third rehab, right?
Totally.
Hey, thank everyone for your support of Project Recovery. Do us a favor. Tell your friends. Give us a rating. Write a review. Hit the subscribe button. Thanks to Dr. Matt, our producer, John, too old for a Mohawk Smith.
Stop
and everyone at KSL. This is Project Recovery, a KSL podcast.